Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to talk about Bitcoin, and we're going to be looking at the fact that it has now set a new all-time high for the 20-week moving average. So if you guys like the content, please subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. So let's go ahead and jump in. So one of the things that we've talked about many times is the 20-week moving average, okay? So let's quickly look at just the 20-week moving average and recognize that historically speaking, it is a pretty good, bull market support line. This tends to be where we hold support in a bull market, and this is why we talk about it so frequently. Now, if you look at the present day, you can see that we were able to hold it. We closely watched this move in here to see if we were going to hold it, and it turns out we held the 20-week moving average. One of the things we noted when we were down here was that if we hold it, we would expect to see, or we not necessarily expect, but it's very possible to see a short-term, or at least a very quick shift in sentiment in the market, because when the 20-week holds, the market sentiment can change on a dime. When it doesn't hold, it is harder to shift that sentiment on a dime, because generally we start heading down for the next few months. Now, one of the things I want to talk about is the 20-week moving average all-time high. And the best way to do that is to look at the BLX, which shows the macroscopic chart. So if you're familiar with this channel, we talk a ton about lengthening cycles, right? And of course, I get a lot of flack from it because of the general idea that Bitcoin needs to peak in 2021. I do think, it's not, I think, right? It takes a lot more volume to push Bitcoin from 10K to 100K than it did from, say, 1K to 10K. And yes, I understand institutional investors, but I still think that this cycle will be longer. With that said, I want to show one, there's a lot of data. We've presented a lot of data for lengthening cycles. I just want to show one thing, in which case you could try to make an argument for it to be sped up quicker than my timeline, okay? And this is just one piece of data, but I don't want to hide anything from you guys. I just want to tell you what the data says. So what we're going to look at here is we're going to draw a line from the prior 20-week moving average all-time high over. Back in 2011. We're going to do the same thing here and just draw it over. And then we're going to, and I don't need to really draw them that far, but then we're going to draw one more from this, or sorry, I need to do this from the 20-week moving average, not the high. So we're going to go down to the 20-week moving average here. And then we're going to do it one more time. So we're going to go to the 20-week moving average and go all the way over. Now on the BLX, it hasn't actually crossed it yet, just because of the closing time frame. But if we zoom this in and try to get these a little bit more accurate, we can look to see, okay, where were the all-time highs of the 20-week moving average? Okay, so this is what we see, and then we can identify where the 20-week moving average crosses this line. And the reason why we're doing this is because let's take a measured move from when we set a new all-time high for the 20-week moving average. So let's take a measured move. We hit the 20-week moving average here, or we set a new all-time high for the 20-week moving average sometime in maybe January of 2013. If we were to go to the all-time high, from that point, it might be around 294, 300 days, approximately 300 days, okay? Approximately 300 days from when the 20-week moving average broke its prior all-time high, okay? Then we're going to do it again. Now this time we're going to take it from this position where it broke the prior all-time high, and all we're going to do is take a measured move, say, okay, it broke it here, and we're going to go all the way up. And you can see here it took approximately 336 days to get to the next all-time high. So only about a month difference, in fact. Now, if we were to continue this trend, and I don't think, there's certainly a good chance we don't, but let's just suppose we do. Let's say, let's suppose that Bitcoin does do this, which I really don't think it will. But let's suppose that it does, and we start to cross, we cross the all-time high on the weekly time frame, right here. So, like this week, next week, whatever. And we scroll it out, and let's add another month just for the sake of it, and say, approximately 360 days. So that would put us in the end of 2021. And so this would be a very, and I mean very bullish scenario. And one of the things I want to talk about here too is the idea of diminishing returns. So I think everyone can agree on diminishing returns. For instance, if you look at the measured move from here to the peak, if I measure it exactly to the peak, it's around 9,500% or so. Maybe you could argue around 10,000%. That's from the price when the 20-week crossed. This one was around 2,500%, so about division by 4. If we just are pretty crude in our approximation and do another division by 4 and say, you know what, maybe the next one will go up 500% from where it currently is, that would put Bitcoin at, you know, $68,000 or so. So it would be a rather lackluster move if it continues to trend up in the same manner. Now, I'm sure a lot of people watching my channel are loving this, especially if you are a strong believer in the 4-year cycle. And I mean, I gotta say, I still think there's a ton of evidence to the contrary, but I'm not going to hide any data. We'll see if this happens. If this plays out, I would genuinely be shocked, right? I would genuinely be shocked if Bitcoin, if the price were to, you know, to rally up to $70,000, $80,000 over the course of the next year. I'm a lot more conservative. I'm a lot more pessimistic than that. And if it does rally, I do want to caution people now. The returns are diminishing, and I think no matter what aisle you stand on in terms of where you see the peak being, you can agree that the returns are diminishing. For Bitcoin to get to say $250,000, which I've seen thrown out 280 somewhere in that time frame, it would essentially need to yield the same return in the same amount of time that it did last market cycle. And to me, that just seems absolutely absurd. I really don't see that happening. I think for sure the cycle's ROIs will decrease, and I also do contend that they will continue to lengthen because, of course, this is just one way to measure the data, and there's plenty of other ways that we've done it before that also say that it will likely take longer. But again, at the same time, I'm not going to hide any data from you. If there's something that suggests that it could theoretically happen earlier, I'm going to present it so we at least have it in our back pocket and say, okay, well, if it does do this, we can get an idea of where it may go. Now, one of the things I wanted to do as well was draw some bars here. So we're just going to copy these bars and overlay it to this one. So if this cycle had done the same thing as the previous one, you can see it would have rallied much higher, okay, from the 20-week moving average, but it didn't, right? It peaked a lot lower. If it had peaked the same amount higher on this scale, then it would have taken it up a lot higher. Now, if we were to draw this over here, again, the same idea, but we know it's not going to increase at the same rate. If we take this move from this point up here, I don't think I actually got all those bars. So let me make sure I get all of the bars. And we overlay that to this cycle, you can see it would bring us down quite substantially. So in the event that we are able to repeat, we would maybe see something like that if we were to see a peak in December. The only reason I'm making this video again is because I want to share the data, share what I'm seeing in the data, but also I want people to be cognizant of the fact that there is a lot of data suggesting that the cycle will take longer. And one of the ones I've spoken about before, of course, is just looking at whether you measure it from bottom to bottom rather than some, moving average, right? Whether if you measure it from bottom to bottom, bottom to peak, bottom to peak, bottom to peak, you can see that we are extending the amount of time between bottom to peak. So 47 weeks, 105 weeks, 153 weeks. If we were to continue and say go out, maybe 200 weeks or so, it would put us in the end of 2022. And this is why I've often said that if I were to say, okay, if I were to put a bound on where the next peak would be, I would argue end of 2022 at the earliest, maybe as late as 2024. I tend to think 2023. Now, if we were to measure it from peak to peak, we can see 132 weeks and then 210 weeks. So if we were to go out again and maybe say 300 weeks, something like that, just trying to extend this trend, it would occur in 2023. And then also if we were to measure, say, bottom to bottom, we're looking at 72 weeks, and then 166 weeks, and then 204 weeks. Continuing the same trend, we would be looking at potentially 250 weeks, 260 weeks, which could put us out in, say, like late 2023, early 2024 for the next bottom. And I know the argument, of course, is the halving, right? Bitcoin operates around the halving. However, I think the halving will have less and less of an effect each market cycle. I don't even think it, I know it, because we can see that each cycle, the peak, the ROI from the halving has reduced every market cycle. So I do think it will have less and less of an effect. I mean, cutting it from 50 Bitcoin to say 25 is more substantial than 25 to 12.5, which is more substantial than 12.5 to 6.25, etc. Of course, the prices have gone up on this, but at the end of the day, I don't think that the halving will have. I think it'll have less and less of an impact as we continue on throughout the life of Bitcoin. And one of the ways that we've looked at this is volatility over the macro scale is reducing. So I think that actually the next, as I've said before, and I know this is not a popular theory, but I'm just going to continue to say it. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I think the next bear market will not be as bad because of the next halving. So I think instead of catalyzing the next bull market, the next halving will curb the effects of the next bear market. This is at least what I think will happen. Of course, we'll see what actually does happen. And again, if you are optimistic about Bitcoin and are hoping to see it go to 6 figures next year, one of the things to remember to look out for is, can it get to a sustainable $20,000 in the next few months? Okay, because in the last cycle, Bitcoin hit the prior all-time high and exceeded it before the first quarter of 2017. So if we want to continue to stay on that track, we would want to see Bitcoin not just get to 20K by the first quarter of 2017, but sustain it and move up to 25K by the second quarter, 30K in the second quarter, and so on and so forth. We want to see this continued move, this continued push in the short term. So it has a lot to live up to. We'll see if it can do it. I like to be a bit more pragmatic on the channel and say I think it will take longer, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest that. And we'll see where things go. We'll see, we'll see if I'm right. We'll see if I'm wrong. If I am wrong, I will admit it, and we'll go from there. If you guys like the content, remember, subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, check out the Telegram channel in the description below, and remember, you can get access to the premium list at intothecryptoverse.com if you want access to weekly reports, weekly videos, a risk dashboard, which is what I use to trade, some Telegram indicators like the regression bands that you can see here, the bull market support bands, which just combine the 20-week SMA or the 20-week SMA and the 21-week EMA and color codes the region in between them. You get access to all sorts of stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed the content. Please subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.